YouTube, my name is Elizabeth. Welcome or welcome back to my channel, Bouquins and Books. In this video, I want to discuss the coziness of mysteries. What makes a mystery cozy? How can you say whether a mystery is cozy or not? Now, I made a bit of research and I took some notes. I have my computer near me, so if I'm looking right there, that means that I'm looking at my computer. And I will start by saying that this will be a long video. So make yourself cozy, go grab a cup of tea or a coffee or something. Make sure you're sitting comfortably because this is going to be long. So I'm going to start by presenting my theory as to what makes a mystery a cozy mystery. And then I will test my I will test my theory against some mysteries that I've read recently, or not that recently. So I will just somewhat test my theory, and perhaps that together we will see whether I have found a way to rate how cozy a mystery is and to define what a cozy mystery is. And I want to stress that this is a discussion video, so I want to hear what you have to say about it. So please leave comments in below and let me know what you think makes a mystery a cozy mystery. Do you like cozy mysteries? Do you hate cozy mysteries? And do you think I'm right? Do you think I'm wrong? Did I forget something? I want to hear what you have to say. If you want to make response videos, if you have a channel, please go ahead. I'd love to hear that. So yeah, comment below. So my theory, what makes a mystery a cozy mystery? Now, of course, when we think cozy, we think comfortable, we think warm, we think safe, sheltered. We think all of these things. And how did it become associated to mysteries? Because there's murder in there. I don't know exactly how it happened, but it definitely happened because now there's a whole part of the publishing industry that focuses only on cozy mysteries, and it's this part of the publishing industry. So when you think cozy mystery, you may be thinking mass market paperback with a pastel cover and spine and a cutesy title like Hop Till You Drop. Or double chocolate cookie murder. Now, I haven't read any of these. No, I've read this one, but I haven't read these two. That I borrowed them from the library. And the reason is I don't read that many of these. Even though I said in a previous video, and I think in more than one previous video, I said that I prefer my mysteries on the cozy side. I am not necessarily drawn to these types of mysteries because what they have come to represent is sort of the over-the-top, the too cozy mystery in a way. But anyway, it's too soon to talk about that. So first, what I did was that I Googled, because now when we have an existential question, we don't go see a priest or we don't see a doctor, we ask Google. So Google, what is a cozy mystery? And I have a few results. I found a few things. And none of them, I could say, really had a definitive answer or an answer that completely satisfied me. Many said, well, it's not quite clear what makes a mystery a cozy mystery. And fortunately, I have to agree, it's not quite clear. So I've thought about the criteria that I found and the things that were talked about in these articles. And I thought about it a bit more and I came up with my own list of criteria, the things that I think make a mystery a cozy mystery. So I ended up with a list of 12 criterias, 12 indicators that show that you are reading a cozy mystery. Now, I don't mean to say that a book to be a cozy mystery must score 12 out of 12 in that grid of evaluation, of assessment, but I think it has to score at least a little something, more than 2, more than 3, and yeah, I guess you will see when I start to talk about them. But before we get to this criteria, to this list of criterias, 1 criterion, 2 criteria, I think that is it. Anyway, forgive my wobbly English on that. My list of indicators. Okay, so before we go to the list of indicators, there is one, I think, condition that is preliminary, that is essential for a mystery to have a chance of being a cozy mystery. And that prerequisite is the unwritten rule that the mystery is set in a world that is good. The world is good. The crime that happened, the murder that happened is an anomaly. Doesn't mean there cannot be more than one. Think Midsummer Murders. There are 2 or 3 murders per weekend, per village. Doesn't matter. There can be more than one. But it is an anomaly. And once you have resolved that anomaly, once you have figured out what went wrong, the world will be right again. So I think this is one prerequisite. So that means you cannot really have a mystery that is cozy if every character is a suspect because every character is evil. It doesn't work. You cannot have a cozy mystery if it is set in some sort of dystopia where everybody is afraid for their life every moment of every day, and there are bodies by the truckload every morning, and it just so happens that one murder is solved but the others are not, and it doesn't change anything to anybody's life. So that cannot be a cozy mystery in my opinion. So the prerequisite is the world is good at the beginning, and unfortunately there's a little wrinkle, but at the end everything will be smooth and good again. So that is the preliminary condition for a cozy mystery. So now, the list of 12 indicators, of 12 criteria. The first one is about the setting. We often associate cozy mysteries with villages, but I don't think that is the criteria. The criteria is not the village. The criteria is that it is set in an idealized place. Regardless of what the place is, whether it's a fictional place or a real place, a small town or a big town, it is an idealized version of the town. So if we are in a village, there is no unemployment problem, which in fact is a problem in most villages, or in a small town. If the mystery is set in an industrial small town, the industry is loved by everyone. Nobody wants the industry to close, and the industry is not polluting anything, and it's a kind industry. Or if it is set in, let's say, New York, because I think it's possible for a cozy mystery to be set in a big city, there will be no rats in the subway. Or regardless of the big city where it is set, there will be no homelessness, there will be no racial tensions, there will be no fear for terrorism, there will be only beautiful buildings, there will be independent shops. There are no Costco's and Walmarts in little towns where cozy mysteries are set. It's an idealized version of the city, so it cannot be set in the slums of, I don't know, Rio or Bombay or I don't know where. It cannot explore the underbelly of Victorian London. It has to be an idealized version of whichever setting is chosen. Number 2, part of that idealized setting is that there is a very strong sense of community. Particularly if it's in a village, that's one of the reasons why it's often cozy mysteries are often set in villages. It's because it's easy to idealize the place. It's easy to show a place where everybody knows one another. Everybody is ready to help one another. So if one character needs help, they find it from the other characters, and you will see the characters hanging out together. They spend a lot of time discussing, talking on the street, talking at the grocery store, having dinner together, having lunch together, going to a potluck together, to a wedding, to some sort of local festival together. You will see a lot of characters hanging out together. And these characters, criteria number 3, these characters very often will be quirky. So quirky characters, the eccentric artist, the half-mad person full of wisdom, the precocious child, the incompetent police officer, the person stuck in time. Let's say the retired teacher stuck in the 1960s with the hair of the 1960s, the clothing of the 1960s, the kitchen of the 1960s, and the music of the 1960s. Something like that. Pets. Animals would often be the quirky characters. So if there's a pet solving a mystery or helping to solve a mystery, like a dog or a cat, it's a quirky character. Or if it is someone who, instead of having a cat or a dog, they have a pig or a duck or a goat or something like that. Quirky characters, they tend to abound in cozy mysteries. And that can include the sleuth. So that brings me to criteria number 4. The sleuth is an amateur. Or I would give half a point if the sleuth is a retired cop or a cop who is not in charge of the investigation. And I think the reason why it's important to cozy mysteries that the investigator is not somebody who is in charge of investigating or is not a professional is to place all the characters on an even plane. It means it's cozier because one character is not crushed by the authority of the other character, and the information is obtained not because a fear of authority, or not out of a compulsion to obey the law, but just out of gossiping and talking with one another. So it really helps the coziness of a mystery when it's not a police officer doing the questioning. Now, the murder, criteria number 5, the murder is not horrifying. Now, I said murder, it could be some other type of crime, but let's take for a basis that we are talking about murder mysteries. So the murder is not horrifying. The victim did not suffer. It's always one blow to the head, one gunshot to the heart, one stab wound to the heart. It's something very quick. The victim did not suffer. The victim was not tortured. The victim wasn't raped. There was no sexual assault. The victim is not a child. The victim is never a child. So it's not a murder that creates fear in the heart of people. The characters continue to live their ordinary life, and the investigator is not completely repelled by the murder, because it is just a regular run-of-the-mill murder that nobody suffered for it. The person was dead before they noticed. So yeah, not a horrifying murder. And then criteria number, I forgot the number where I am, number 6. Criteria number 6, nobody mourns the victim, or very little. There are 2 tricks for that. Either we quickly find out that the victim was not the most savory character. Perhaps they were a loner. Perhaps they were already known for having done something bad. They had stolen some money, or I don't know what. The character was not the nicest of person, and nobody in the village or the town or the city is crying for that person. Or the other solution is that the person is not from the town. The person is from out of town. So even if they were a good person, that person's family is not in the picture. They are in some other town. They are doing their grieving far away. So we don't see anybody cry for the victim. Criteria or indicator. I said at the beginning I would use indicator. So number 7, the investigation focuses on ordinary life. That is very much linked to the motive of the murderer, but at the beginning of the book, we don't really see the motive. We can only see where the investigation is going and looking for a motive, but it will be focused on ordinary life. Who is sleeping with whom, or who is married with whom, who inherited what money from whom, who owes money to whom. So it's about money, it's about love, it's about inheritance. It can be about rivalries or tensions between neighbors, between siblings, between business owners or competitors. It could be that sort of thing, financial difficulties, maybe a gambling addiction, but basically it's something very ordinary. It is not international espionage. It is not diamond smuggling. It is not drug wars. It is not mafia related. It is not a conspiracy being uncovered. It is very small thing. It's local thing, ordinary thing. So the investigation is about ordinary life. Criteria number 8, except for the murder itself, which, as I said, it was a very clean murder. So except for the murder itself, there is no violence. So it is not a place where fights erupt for no reason, or for one reason or another, for no reason at all. The sleuth will not obtain information from beating someone up. And we don't fear for the sleuth. So it sort of goes both ways. There is no violence, and at the same time, there is no fear of violence. So, yeah, the people are safe. It goes back to perhaps the original premise that the world is good. People feel safe despite the murder. So there is no violence and no fear except the murder itself. Criteria number 9. No sensitive issues will be mentioned. At a different time, this was phrased like this: do not mention the war. Now, I am of course talking about sensitive issues from today. So, well, from the time that the book is written and published. So if it's a historical novel being published right now, and that is about the early 1900s, and it's talking about women's vote, At the time, in the early 1900s, women's vote was a sensitive issue. So, but that is not a problem today, because most readers of cozy mysteries are women, and I will say that most women are happy to have the vote. So, women's voting rights for women is not a sensitive issue. However, what is a sensitive issue today may vary from place to place. So, in these cozy mysteries, this particular it's two different publishing houses, but this particular type of cozy mystery is very much geared for the American market. In fact, I don't even know if they are available in England or in Australia or something. They are very much geared for the American market, and they are made in the United States. So sensitive issues in the United States today are abortion, atheism, gun control, climate change, politics. So no real life politics. There may be some sort of local election going on, but you will not see the name of Donald Trump in a cozy mystery. You will not, if it's a bit of an older mystery, you will have no mention of Gore versus Bush. There will be no mention of the war in Iraq or in Afghanistan. There is no sensitive issues that are mentioned, whether it's sensitive because it's contentious or because it's unpleasant. Maybe I should have called it that. No unpleasant issues being mentioned. At number 10, it's kind of related to the unpleasantness, but there will be no vulgarities. Then again, what is vulgarity changes from place to place and over time, but that would mean no swear words, no explicit sex scene, no toilet humor, how can I say that? A certain level of propriety is expected from the characters. So for example, you wouldn't have two characters in a bar discussing the physical attributes of every person who walks in the bar. So discussing the chest or the crotch of said person. So it's not the sort of conversations you will see in a cozy mystery. So there's a minimum level of good manners expected from the characters and from the narrator, whether it's a third person or first person narrator, there's a minimum of good behavior expected. Now, of course, as I said, it may vary a lot. How many people are really truly offended by the F word today? I don't like to read it because I think it's poor writing, but I'm not really offended. So it may vary. It's kind of subjective in a way, but I'll come back to the subjectiveness of it all later. So that is a criteria that was number 10. At 11, I would say this one is a bit related to marketing, but I think it also concerns the cozy atmosphere within the book. The book focuses on a special interest. Special interest can be, like in these mysteries, a hobby. Like this one is about sewing. At the time I bought this, I was learning how to sew, so I was interested in a mystery where the characters were sewing. And it was very fashionable at the time. This was about 10 years ago, and there were tons of mysteries on sewing, knitting, cross-stitching, quilting, and I think they remain today. They still exist. And now there are also, well, it probably were then too, but there are also mysteries where the special interest is the location. For example, mysteries set in a library, in a bookstore, in a bakery shop. Or geographical locations like mysteries set in Tuscany, in Provence, in a tropical island. So these are things that before we start reading the book, before we even read one line, already send us positive vibes. We are already set in a cozy mood just because of that special interest. And I would include in the special interest the various subgenres of cozy mysteries. For example, cat mysteries. If you like cats and you know that there's a cat involved in a mystery, you're going to be in a positive mood before you even start reading the book. If you like romance, then the book that advertises that there is a romance in the mystery will put you in a cozy mood. So I would include these subcategories of mysteries into this special interest indicator. And then last but not least, and once again very subjective, it is that the mystery does not take itself too seriously. How do you see that? How do you gauge that? By the content a little bit. Your characters will be placed in funny situations or in absurd situations, and they will not be offended by it. They will think it's funny. the title may have a pun in it or have a cutesy title. But also, more importantly, the writer does not take himself or herself too seriously. They perfectly know that they are not trying to win the Nobel Prize or the Booker or the Pulitzer. So it will not be written in stream of consciousness, or it will not be written in a single sentence of 200 pages. The writer will mainly focus on writing a good story with good characters, and not that it will not be well written. You're allowed to write to have a superb style and still write cozy mysteries, but it's just that the focus is the story. So the writer will not place themselves between the reader and the story. So that is one of the ways that I consider a writer or a book can take itself too seriously. And also the content, as I said, it's about ordinary life. It's not about saving the world. It is not about writing the great American novel. It is not about finding the meaning of life, you know. It really is just a good story, and that's it. So these are the 12 criteria I came up with. And if you take a mystery and just gauge it against these criteria, these indicators, it will give you a score out of 12, and I think it will give you a good idea of whether your mystery is cozy or not. There are a couple of criteria that I thought of including, but then I decided that they were not important, or they were already included elsewhere. One of them was scientific evidence. Most cozy mysteries do not rely on scientific evidence to solve the mystery, but then I thought it does not add or remove anything to the coziness of a mystery. For example, I can very well imagine a group of high school teachers using the school lab to create their own little CSI unit to solve mysteries, and that could be totally cozy. And at the same time, you can imagine some mysteries set in the Middle Ages when there was no science to say, no real science, and they could use torture to find information, and that would not be cozy. So I don't think scientific evidence makes or breaks a cozy mystery. The other thing that I was thinking was that the sleuth does not act alone. The sleuth is not, one against the world. But then I figured that this attitude of one against the world is not so much that its absence is a sign of coziness, but that its presence is the sign of another genre. Perhaps the noir novel, perhaps the bleak Scandinavian novel. I don't know exactly, but I think it was more a sign of something else if the sleuth is alone. And if the sleuth works in a team, well, that is part of the sense of community in the village or in the town, in the city. It's part of the characters hanging out together. So I decided that this was not a criteria on its own. And let's face it, in most of mysteries nowadays, the investigator is not alone. They have sidekicks, they have helpers, they have a bunch of people. So I don't think it's a specific criteria of cozy mysteries. So now comes the part where I test my theory. So I've chosen a few novels that I've read recently, and I measured them on that grid. So I would give 1 point or half a point for each of the criterias, and then I added it up, and then we can see whether something is cozy or not. The first one that I measured was Murder in Chianti by Camilla Trinchieri. It is the first cozy. It's the first mystery that I read for March Mystery Madness. Okay, so now I will have to look at my computer for that. So the first criteria was idealized setting. Absolutely, yes, 1 point. It is set in Tuscany. So it's in a beautiful little village at the top of a hill with cobblestone streets and all of that. So totally, completely idealized setting. Strong sense of community. Once again, every character knows one another, they hang out together, they have meals together, and all of that. So, absolutely. Quirky characters. Yes, there were at least 2 quirky characters in this. There was a half-mad man spewing Dante quotes whenever he was asked anything, and there was a cute dog that found the body and dug a few pieces of evidence. So, yes, absolutely quirky characters in there. Amateur sleuth, half a point, because it's a retired cop. So he's not in charge of the investigation. He's not even from the place. He's an American cop who retired in Italy for reasons of his own. And so half a point for that. The murder is not horrifying. So this one, if I remember correctly, it was 1 gunshot straight to the heart. Nobody mourns the victim. For a little while, we don't know who the victim is, and then when we find out, we find that it's not the nicest of people. And they lived far away. So, yeah, nobody cares for the victim. Investigation is about ordinary life. Yes, it is. No violence or fear. I give it half a point there because there was violence, but in the past. So there is reference to a violent event or more than one violent event in the past. So I'm going to give it just half a point for that. No sensitive issues. I'm going to give it just half a point for that because there's a question a bit of domestic abuse in there. There's a controlling boyfriend in there, so I think it touches upon the sensitive issue of domestic violence. It's a bit realistic. It's not necessarily the sort of thing that we see in cozy mysteries, so just 0.5 because it's not dominant. It's there, but it's not dominant. No vulgarities, none that I can remember. No special interest. Yes, there is a special interest, and that would be Tuscany because... Anyway, I've been to Tuscany, and at least for me, it sends me a whole bunch of positive vibes. It's such a beautiful place. So yes, absolutely special interest. And does not take itself too seriously. Yes, absolutely. It doesn't take itself too seriously. So that is a total of 10.5 out of 12. So yes, I think this qualifies as a cozy mystery. Yeah. So, I guess maybe perhaps at the end we'll be able to find what is the precise number that will make cozy, the minimum threshold to reach for a mystery to be cozy, but I don't think it's necessarily possible. Anyway, I'll discuss it a bit more later. So this one, yes, I think qualifies as cozy. The second one that I read for March Mystery Madness is Black Diamond by Martin Walker, and I read it in an electronic version, so I don't have the book to show you here. This one is the third in a series. The series is called Bruno, Chief of Police, and I very much like the first one that I read last year because it was quite cozy. It is set in southern France, and Bruno, Chief of Police, he is the Chief of Police of the local little town. So that's not the gendarmerie, that's not the big police outfit in charge of murders. He's in charge of parking tickets and graffitis and that sort of thing. So yeah, so that was the first one, and now I read the second one last year too, and I read the third for March Mystery Madness. So idealized setting, absolutely, a lovely town in the south of France. Strong sense of community, absolutely. The characters all come together to find some money for kids of people who lost their job just recently, just before Christmas. Quirky characters. I'm not giving any points for that because there used to be quirky characters in the first book, but they have been sidelined for the third one, or they have been made less quirky, so I'm not giving any points for that. Amateur sleuth, well, 0.5 because, as I said, Bruno is a police officer, but because he's not from the unit in charge of investigating murders, then he's not really in charge, so 0.5. The murder is not horrifying. 0 points for that. The person was tortured, so no. Nobody mourns the victim. I'm giving it a point. There's a bit of mourning because he was the victim was a local person, but he was not really part of the community, was a bit standing aside, did not have any close family, so I'm giving it a point. We're not really mourning for the person. The investigation is about ordinary life. No point for that because as the title says, Black Diamond. The Black Diamond is the famous truffle of the Périgord. And quite soon we know that there's something fishy going on at the truffle market. So it focuses on that. And it focuses on other bigger things. So I don't want to say too much about it, but it doesn't focus on ordinary life. No violence or fear. No, 0 points for that because we see characters being attacked right in the middle of in broad daylight. Yeah, no, so no point for that. No sensitive issues. Again, no points for that because there are mention of politics. There are mentions of illegal immigration, of violence, of gang violence, of the elections with actual real parties like the Greens and the Front National, and mention of Algeria, and no, so no points for that. No vulgarities, swear words, they were in French, but they count, so no. Special interest, that I give a point because of southern France, because oh my god, this little town sounds so nice, and the food, they mention truffles, they mention wine, they mention foie gras, so yes, absolutely special interest, and does not take itself too seriously. This one, I'm going to give it 0.5 because there are some weird, funny situations. For example, our hero makes an arrest while he is dressed as Santa Claus. So that definitely counts as not taking itself too seriously. But at the same time, I am considering, if we consider that the first one in the series would have scored very high on the cozy scale, and now the third one does not, for me it's a sign that the writer is starting to think to take himself a bit too seriously for me. So just 0.5 for that. So the total is 5 points. So 5 out of 12. Is it a cozy mystery? I would say it's not. I would say it's not a cozy mystery because of the violence, because it is about rivalries between gangs, because it's about big things and not necessarily conspiracy theories, but it's not about ordinary life. It's about important things. I think these are, for me, the main criteria. If it's not about ordinary life, if there is violence and there's fear, for me, these are the two biggest, I think. The two biggest, yeah, now I'm thinking about it. Perhaps I should have ranked them in order of importance. Well, anyway, so that's the grid. For the moment, I guess it'll do. So, yeah, so basically it doesn't score enough points for me for it to be considered a cozy. So if somebody tells me, oh, I love cozy mysteries and they have this in mind, I would no way recommend Black Diamond because it wouldn't fit the expectations of somebody who loves to read this type of book. So that would definitely be a non-cozy mystery. The third book that I read for March Mystery Madness was Behind the Shattered Glass by Tasha Alexander. Now, this one is a historical mystery. It is set at the end of the Victorian era in 1895, 6, something like that. And it is set in an estate, like you can see here. So, criteria 1, idealized setting. Yes, absolutely. It's in a Victorian estate where the lord and lady of the manor talk to their staff, treat their staff well. They talk to their neighbors, and there is no exploitation of workers and that sort of thing. So idealized setting, absolutely. Strong sense of community. Yes, even though the houses are not close to one another, there's a sense of community. They know the neighbors and that sort of thing. Quirky characters, yes, quirky characters in there. Perhaps not as quirky as they were in the first book that I mentioned, Murder in Chianti, but definitely quirky characters. Their friend Lord Thingy, who was invited here. Yeah, the Oxford friend, I forgot his name, but he's quite quirky to me. And there probably are a few... yeah, the butler is a bit quirky, and yeah, a bunch of quirky characters. Oh, the neighbor is definitely quirky. So yeah, quirky characters galore. Amateur sleuth. Yes, Lady Emily is not a professional police officer. Murder not horrifying, if I remember correctly, and I do remember correctly, it was 1 blow to the head, so nothing to fear there. The investigation is about ordinary life. Yes, oops, I forgot one. Nobody mourns the victim. Nobody mourns the victim because the victim is the lord of the neighboring estate. However, it turns out that very quickly we learn he's not the nicest guy. So, yeah, no, nobody mourns the victim, really. Oh, apparently, oh, sorry, I'm not reading my grid correctly. Apparently, I'm giving it 0.5 for that. Nobody mourns a victim. Oh, it's true that this lord had a cousin, and the cousin is mourning somewhat this victim. So 0.5 for that. Okay, 0.5. Investigations about ordinary life. Absolutely it is. No violence outside of the murder. Absolutely. No sensitive issues. I give it 0.5 because there is mentions of... well, the reason why the victim is not the most of savory character is a bit of a sensitive issue. So I won't say what it is, but I'm just going to give it 0.5. It's not necessarily at the forefront, but it's not absent either. So 0.5 for that. No vulgarities, so no vulgarities. A special interest. I would say that the estate is a special interest. Perhaps that for you it's the Victorian era that is a special interest. Perhaps that for you it's nothing at all. So it can be subjective. But for me it's the big estate. I think it puts us in a cozy mood where we're going to hang out in a beautiful house. So it's always kind of fun. And does not take itself too seriously. I give it a point. So that is a total of 11 out of 12. So I think that this is a cozy mystery. Next, I will think, or I will talk about, two mysteries in a single series. That would be the Louise Penny Armand Gamache series. So this is the first book in her series, and this is the 14th book in her series. And yeah, so first criteria, idealized setting. Yes, this is set in Three Pines, which is a lovely little village in the eastern townships in the province of Quebec, and that little village is absolutely idealized with a bistro and a bakery and a bunch of artists, and it's not even on maps, yet tourists find it. But anyway, completely idealized place. Strong sense of community. Yes, the characters hang out together a lot. Quirky characters. Yes, we have a weird poet, we have a couple of weird painters, we have a bunch of quirky characters. Amateur sleuth. No points for that because it's a professional police officer investigating. The murder is not horrifying. No, it is not. If I remember correctly, this one was an arrow to the heart. Is it this one or maybe not? Tragic hunting accident, or maybe not. Maybe it was a gunshot. But anyway, so yeah, nothing horrifying in the murder. Nobody mourns the victim. No point for that, because this is the first one. So the character who dies was a friend of all the other characters in the village. That person had a son, so we see the son mourning. So yeah, no points for that. The investigation's about ordinary life. Yes, it is. There is no violence or fear. No, there isn't. So a point for that. No sensitive issues mentioned. Point for that. No vulgarities. I give it 0.5 for that, because there is in the series in general, there is abundant use of the F word, and the F word, in fact there are two F words. There's the F word that rhymes with puck, and there is the F word that is a synonym for cigarettes in Britain, and that is a slur for gay in the United States, or North America I should say. So these two F words are copiously used, and I don't remember when they start. So I think in this one, it's only the first one. It's only the one that rhymes with puck. I think it's the only vulgarity in there. I don't think there's the other. So I'm going to give it 0.5. Special interest. I don't think there is. I do like the Eastern Townships, but I think for anybody outside of the Eastern Townships, it doesn't count as a special interest. I don't think it creates any positive vibes before you read the book. So I'm going to say no. And then does not take itself too seriously. I'm going to give it a point because it does not take itself too seriously. So with all of this, it scores 8.5 out of 12. Is it a cozy mystery? I think it still is. I think it has serious cozy aspects to it. And as I said for Black Diamond, I think for me the most important aspects of cozies is that there is no violence outside of the murder itself, and that it is focused on ordinary life. So to me, these are two very important aspects. So I would consider this still cozy at 8.5 out of 12. Now, for this one, Kingdom of the Blind. So if you have read the series up to there, this one is the one that is about it's the one where there is at the same time the trial for murder and the murder investigation. So both are going on in parallel. Some chapters are about the investigation and some chapters are about the trial for that precise murder. So idealized setting, yes, it is still set in Three Pines, that lovely little village. Strong sense of community, still there. Quirky characters, still there, even quirkier than they were before, so almost caricatures by now. Amateur sleuth, still not. Murder not horrifying. I don't remember that the murder was particularly horrifying. I think it was one blow to the head, so yeah, a point for that. The investigation is about ordinary life. No, not anymore. The investigation goes beyond that by now. By this time in the series, there has been a bunch of conspiracy theories going on, corruption at the Sûreté du Québec, and now there's a question of international drugs thingy. Anyway, so it gets bigger. So no, it's not about ordinary life. No violence or fear. Absolutely not. At the end, there is a big outburst of violence, and so violence. No sensitive issues. No points for that too, because there's drugs in there and opioid crisis and a whole bunch of things like that. So no points for that. Special interest, still no point for that, because I don't think there's a particular special interest related to it. And does not take itself too seriously. I don't give it a point for that. I think it is taking itself too seriously because, and that is very subjective. If this is the sort of book that you like, perhaps you think, no, this is perfect, and it's the first one that was too weak. But I think this one, because it set the mood for quite a cozy series, because we are talking about little murders, little ordinary, run-of-the-mill little murders, and in this one, we are quite deep into drug trafficking and conspiracies and corruption and a whole bunch of things like that. And because of this literary effort, I would say, of trying to tell in parallel without spoiling the investigation, the trial for the murder. So you have, it's a bit of a juggling act to tell the story of the trial without mentioning or without giving clues as to who is the guilty one. So yes, for that reason, I don't give it a point. I think for me, it is taking itself too seriously. So that is a total of 5 out of 12, this one too. So I think that this is not a cozy mystery. 5 out of 12, it doesn't qualify as a cozy mystery. So these are the ones that I had. So I don't know, again, where the exact fine line is between cozy and not cozy. Clearly at 5 out of 12, it doesn't qualify. At 8 out of 12, it still does, perhaps. So perhaps the line is somewhere between 6 and 8, I guess. And that's now I realize that perhaps my grid is not perfect because perhaps some elements are worth more than 1 point. And for me, I think the main elements are that there is no violence and that the murder is not horrifying and that the investigation is about ordinary life. I don't care for conspiracies. I don't care for international drug trafficking, and I don't care for any of these things. So I think for me, these 3 criteria are the most important, but perhaps to you, they may be something else. So I realize that many of these things, many of these criteria, of these indicators are very subjective. One criteria that for me is very important may not be to you. And how do you gauge it? How do you gauge what is a vulgarity and what is not? What is a special interest? What is not? What is a murder that creates fear and what is a murder that is not horrifying? I guess it very much depends from one person to another. And I think also within each indicator, within each criteria, there's a range. For example, the quirky characters. It's one thing to have a dog help you or a dog finding the body or something like that. And it's something else that every character is completely over the top. So there is still a wide range within each criteria. So even if 2 books, let's say, each score 10 out of 12, it still may be that one is way more cozy than the other. One is way more, not necessarily way more cozy, but more intense in the aspects that we associate to cozy mysteries. So yes, for example, if the murder turns out to be an accident, that one is something that I hate. I read one book like that and I just hated that. If you're going to kill someone, just kill them. Just don't make it an accident. I dropped the knife and the person died. No, you don't drop a knife and kill someone. Just stab them, but just don't drop the knife, you know, that sort of thing. So so there is such a thing, in my opinion, as too cozy. So the murder is not horrifying. But if the murder is intentional, does it make it horrifying? I guess it may depend on some people. For me, the murder has to be intentional, otherwise it's no fun. But maybe it depends. So there is a lot of wiggle room in these criterias. And yeah, I think at this point I'm just going to start rambling. So I'm just going to repeat again. If you have any opinion as to that, what you think is a cozy mystery, do you think I missed certain elements? Do you think that there's something you look for in cozy mysteries that I have not mentioned at all, or that I did not give enough importance to, that deserved its own point, its own indicator on the scale? And perhaps you could use the grid to grade some of the mysteries you've read, and perhaps we could collectively arrive at a point where we can say, okay, if you score 7 out of 12, you are cozy, but below 7 you're not, or below 8 you're not, or well, perhaps for you, you would need a 12 out of 12 or at least 10, or I don't know. Just let me know. I'm very curious to hear what you have to say about that. So thank you everyone for watching. I will see you in the next video that will hopefully be much shorter than this one. À la prochaine!